Welcome passengers to Train Real World. My name is Stephen, also known as MegaSim, and this is an extended edition of the HST move 43025 from Ely to Ruddington. So in this video we are going further. We are looking at unseen footage, extended footage, looking at the history of 43025 and HST, showcasing this trip. And that's what we want to do in this video. And don't forget, this is private property. So if you are heading to Ely, please don't. Just watch the footage online and try not to get involved in that, because it is private property. And the only reason we're having access here is because we were officially invited for this move to Ruddington. So going back to the very start of 43025's life, it was ordered as part of a lot on the 22nd of January 1974. So this was the first production HST order destined primarily for the Paddington to Bristol and South Wales route. So this power car was always going to be on the Western region. That's what it was built for. That's what it was going to stay for all of its life on the main line. Now, it was released from Crew Works on the August 21st, 1976, and was accepted into traffic in October the same year. First of all, though, it was allocated to Old Oak Common Depot, and it was part of the set 253012. So if you have a look back over the years with the Blue Intercity, you'll see 253 and the other three numbers on the front and back of these HST sets, primarily in the Western region, or it was in the Western region. The reason why is they wanted to create this train, even though it was different locos front and back, it was always going to be one train, and they tried not to take that apart. Now, 253012 meant that this power car was teamed up with 43024. Now, it didn't quite make it into passenger service on day one of the 125 mile an hour timetable. That was 4th of October 1976 that started, but it was later on in October of that month that it started with crew training duties. So it started as a training power car, showcasing to the crew what they can do, looking at all the safety systems, all the seats and the power and the brakes and connections, and being able to link it to another HST or another loco if it needed to be pulled in an emergency. That's what it was primarily used for right at the beginning in October 76. Now, a reappraisal of the Western region allocations, which meant that locos, power cars got moved around on the Western region. There are a number of depots that Western region had, and it was relocated or reallocated to Lara down in Plymouth. And in 1988 it became part of the Intercity Great Western subsector. Now, we all know that there was the privatisation that came in the 90s, and Angel Trains was the leasing company for this fleet, and they leased it to the Great Western Trains franchise. Now, there was a moment in the spotlight that 43025 had. It received plates. Exeter was the nameplate on the side of the loco of the power car, and it was unveiled on the Plymouth to Paddington route before departure. Now, what was unusual for this was, for an HST, the plates were on this loco type had larger lettering. So this was usually lettering that would be used for the Class 50s. So you would usually get these nameplates that were quite small, but Exeter was big and large. The lettering on there was massive compared. So it was very different, but it still looked pretty decent with Exeter written on the side there. As we know, Exeter, the colouring on there were two different types depending on the time of year. With the privatisation, at one point it was red, at another point it was black on the background of that. But nonetheless, Exeter was its name. Now, there was a further swap round of depot allocations. January 2003 saw that this loco went to Bristol St Philip's Marsh, which became its home before the launch of the Greater Western franchise, so an augmented HST operation. So this is when all the Great Western power cars were planned for re-engined. Now, we all know that we had the Valenta Paxman engine first of all. There was the one in between, wasn't there, where they trialled that out and that failed. Well, as in it didn't go well. And then there was decided that it would either be MTU engine or the VP185 by Paxman. Now, Great Western decided to go for the MTU conversion. So 43025 was sent to Brush in Loughborough. If you've gone on TrainSim World and you've been on the Midland Main Line, look at the Loughborough station just outside there. I know the Brush logo's not on it, but that's where it was sent in September 2006 to be re-engineered and had the MTU conversion. And we can see that on this video footage now, the new engine in there, the thing is that it's a lot tighter in there. And if you look there, just that door just there to the right, I can't fit through that. I'm too big, and I'm not big. Because with these engines, they were a lot bigger than the Paxman engine. They've just got bigger over time. I believe the MTU is bigger than the VP185. So as we said, it was re-engined. Now, it came out 7th of December of 2006, and it was reallocated to Landor. So this was a new pool for First Great Western power cars. And 4 days later, before moving on again, February 2007, it was reallocated to Lara once more. Lara being in Plymouth. Now, unfortunately, there were a spate of fires with the new engines. MTU got to grips with the demanding HST duty cycle, which unfortunately 43025 was a victim of that. So it actually returned to Brush in 2007. And it took until May 2008 for it to actually come out. So there was a lot of attention that was brought on that, plus the re-engines of other power cars. So it did take a while for that to happen. But the Exeter lane plates were removed when they had the MTU conversion. But it received new plates. The Institution of Railway Operators, 2000 to 2010, 10 years promoting operational excellence. So this was something that was placed onto the power car in 2010. And that's what it was doing. Now, unfortunately, the rundown of the fleet started. As we know, the IET, the Class 800 802, the Flying Cucumber, whatever you want to call it, started taking over. And 43025 was taken off lease 7th of April 2019. And then 4 days later, its final working had been undertaken. 22nd of March was the last trip, and this is where it went from Lara to Ely. Funnily enough, or fittingly, 43024 was the rear power car that was chosen, which actually brings it back to the 253012 days. So it was fittingly paired with that on the way to Ely. And it actually was connected to 024 for quite a few years in Ely as well. On the 1st of May 2023, it was acquired, as you know, by 125 Group with a generous donation from a member. And this is where we start making our way, pulling 43025 off the tracks, onto the trailer, and head to Ruddington. Now, looking at a little bit of history of the Class 43 itself, also named as Intercity 125. 125 meaning the speed that it would comfortably go at, 125 miles per hour. Now, the Class 43 is officially the fastest diesel locomotive in the world. It went 148.5 miles per hour. That's 239 kilometres. But the regular service speed, as we said, is 201 kilometres, 125 miles an hour. If we think of the Intercity 225, which is the Class 91 on LNER, 225 was the higher number, and it looked good, even though in the UK we don't really deal with kilometres, we deal with miles per hour. But 225 kilometres was 140, which was its speed that it went comfortably at. But as we all know, the tracks and the lines in the UK aren't built for that speed, except for High Speed 1. Hence, the 225 only actually goes 125 maximum on the line. You probably know that 125 mile an hour is not the top speed at all times. It depends on the area of the route. Near me, with the cross-country HST, when we go from Burton to Tamworth, in between that part, as long as it's not running late and it's stuck behind something, the top speed we usually go for at round there is 120. So it really depends. There's only not a few spots. There are a few more spots now, but for the HST running now, the GWR HST, the ScotRail HST, and the cross country, very rarely, I don't think there is a spot where it goes 125 miles an hour anymore. Now, if you think I'm wrong, please leave a comment. Let me know where on the route that it does go 125 miles an hour on the main line. I would love to know. So going back into the history of the Class 43, the HST, it was the early 1970s, and BR wanted to make a decision to replace the mainline express diesel traction. Now, the problem was mass electrification was not possible because of financial limitations, so a new generation of high-speed diesel trains had to be developed. Now, we all know the APT, the Advanced Passenger Train, had a gas engine version and an overhead electric version. That was what was going to take over the BR intercity routes. But they were having trouble with it, and they wanted a stopgap. They wanted a temporary fix. And this is where the HST came along. This is where the HST was temporary to be used. Now, the prototype for the Class 43 was actually the 41. It had a smaller window on the front because they thought that having one driver, etc. But BR being BR and the workers, they'd always had two people working in the cab, and they wanted to continue that. So, as you know, the HST that we see now has got two seats in for the driver and assistant in there as well. They did use the Paxman Valenta engine, which could take up to 2,250 horsepower. And that's what both the prototype and the real, the final Class 43 had, which is just absolutely amazing. The Paxman Valenta engine, I've watched videos, but I really can't remember distinctly remembering the Valenta whine, the scream of the Valenta. I would love to have that memory, but it's just not there. So I just watch videos to remember that. So the design was successful, and then they had production orders being placed for the Western region, Eastern region, Scottish and the London Midland regions. So this, remember, was before privatisation, so we did have those different regions. And there were, as you know from looking at Class 43, there isn't the conventional buffers, but there is the drawbar, the hook bar, the tow bar would be on the front if it needed to be connected to anything. But the HST, the train itself, was to be complete and not to be linked to anything. Power car on the front and the back, going in really good speed along the the British Railway network. Now here's some unseen footage on the GoPro that I stuck on the windscreen of the HST itself. So as we can see, the footage we've already seen was on the outside. This is sped up to show you what's going on in the cab itself. There were buffered units that were created for the Class 43. As we know, they went with Grand Central and eventually as with Rail Adventure. So they used them more of a freight scenario of pulling new trains along the network, which is just great to see a HST being used in that environment. But those power cars were used for cross-country and Virgin trains. So they had, you know, the Virgin Red livery on there. And I remember the Virgin livery back in the day. There used to be a summer trip from London to Kent to Ramsgate. And I remember being at my auntie and uncle's house. And they used to live next to the railway line. And I would look up and see the HST going past. I don't know if it was once a day because I was very young then, but I do remember seeing and hearing the HST going through over to Ramsgate. So now with the Class 43025 fully secure, we're almost ready to get going and start heading towards Ruddington. There's a lot of things that need to happen with this because it's going to be on the road. It's going to need that secure chains on there. It needs to make sure that it won't move on the route, and it needs to also make sure that it's the right height. But we'll be looking at that in a bit and going through a little bit more detail on that on the trip itself. Now, British Rail experimented with the Merley's Blackstone MB190 engines. There were 4 HST power cars that were used for that, but the experiment was unsuccessful and they carried on with the Valentas. Now, Paxman, who created the Valenta, then came up with the VP185, which was trialled, but most of the regions went for the MTU in the end, and the VP185s only went to certain locations. Now, the 185 itself, even though they are the same horsepower, it is weaker. It does take a lot longer to get to that point, but it still sounds like a good engine. And if you've been on Train Sim World, you've got the Great Western Express with the MTU engine, or you've got the Midland Main Line by Skyhook Games, where they've got the VP185 example that you are able to drive and listen to as well. Now, this lorry was a beast. The pneumatic on there, being able to pull this train up on this little, well, I say little, this thing, you know, with the poles going through there and the weights, it was amazing to see. Because the loco is quite heavy. Now, it's not as heavy as some can be. You do have to be careful on the roads with heavy machinery, especially times of day, and certain bridges, and all sorts of things need to be taken into consideration. And the route has to be mapped out exact, so they have to know what route they're going, where they can or can't go, and timings as well. But we'll go through that in a little bit because we do have some examples of that I will go through. So as they're finally bringing that up, the power car is ready and raring to go. So let's go and sign out of Angel Trains so we can then start heading over to Ruddington. Now, as a big reminder, this is private property. We were officially allowed to be here at this location in Ely, so please don't just fly your drones or hang over or try and get into this site. It is a private site, it is a working site. Now, right behind me are a load of HSTs, EMR, LNER, all of those sorts of things, Great Westerns, but I can't show you because they're owned by Angel. This is a private property. The only reason we were able to film here, we were able to document this, was because this power car was sold. So that's what we showcased. Now, as we go over this bridge, the power car is higher than it should be on the roads, but that is because this bridge is prone to being damaged. Now, in the past, locos and trucks and all sorts have gone over with these trailers, but they've been too low and they've scraped off all the paneling. They've not tipped the bridge off, but moved it in a way that it was unsafe and had to be refixed, because it literally is not, it's floating on the top. It's kind of lifted in, but it's not fully bolted down, I don't believe. So even though it is a permanent and a bridge that can be used for heavy goods, you do need to be careful with, especially with this length of trailer, getting stuck on there, being I've forgotten the term for it, where you get beached, so kind of like that, but on the roads. But the reason why we're this high is because of the bridge being that different angle, needing to make sure. Now, as we can see now, we can start seeing the wheels turning, so it does have a rear turning wheel. And back in the day, the ones I remember, the American fire engines, where there used to be somebody that used to sit in the back on a wheel, and they used to turn those wheels. Nope, this is all done through the lorry now and through all the system, the computerized system, to kind of know where this is all going. Now, I didn't go into the truck itself to see exactly what he was doing, but maybe there was an additional thing in there that he was able to do, but I didn't find that out, so apologies on there. But now we are pulling over, because this is now the point where they need to check the height of the power car, because bridges and tunnels and things like that we'll be going under, we need to be low enough for that to happen. Now, in the UK, there are double-decker lorries with supermarkets and things. As you can see, look, he's now adjusting it per wheel, and he's using a trusty measuring tape. Now, as I said, supermarkets have the double-deckers. They were slightly higher than the power car. At times you were like, ooh, will it hit the bridge? No, there is a legal limit of a height, and it was under it, but the driver and the van driver as well, and they had to check each wheel to make sure that it was the right height. And it's good that they were able to safely do that. It was pretty amazing to see the power car being pulled like this with it facing us. It could have been the other way, but thankfully it was facing this way, so it just looked even better in this footage. Now this is a once in a lifetime trip to take, but I wanted to document it so we're able to see it. Now this was one of my favourites, this truck on the left. It sounded so good, so let's have a listen to it now. I think he turned off the silencer or something on there. Now, this is where I fell asleep because I woke up to a bang. One of the tyres had blown. But thankfully there was a spare set on those wheels at the back where they, they took up the blown out tyre, they lifted it, and then they put down the spare set of wheels down. So the thing is that because of the weight of the loco, it was difficult to replace the tyre, so that was done at Ruddington later on in the evening. Because of the weight of the loco, because of the freight weight, there is an embargo on when you can be on the motorways and on certain roads. Now we were of that weight, so we had to come off the M1 and visit the Leicester Services for a bit of Chinese. I think one of the guys had a KFC, which was nice. But yeah, we had to come off for a bit, so that looked quite funny. Now, we really wanted to kind of do a fake fueling, but that wasn't possible. So as you can see, look at that. Just in the services in the car park. The lorry driver just to the left got a bit scared because he was in his cab. As they were reversing, he thought they were going to go into him, but nope, it didn't happen. But a lot of heads turned in the car park watching this, and also whilst we were on the motorway as well, lots of heads turning watching this. Now as you can see, the power car was low enough to fit into the petrol station there, but it was because of timings and things like that, we decided it's probably not worth it, because if it didn't fit we'd have to reverse, then it would just cause a load of hassle. So we've got it going past now, and it does look pretty good just going in and out of the services. But yeah, just a great thing to see. Now thinking of the 43025, now before it went to Ely, I believe Lara did some changes and some updates, and I think they gave it a little bit of a service, an MOT, because the bogies were pretty much new. The connector on the back of the power car was new. The batteries look new. There was lots of fuel in the power car itself. It's like it was given a service before it then went and it left and got switched off, which doesn't sound great. And it's, a bit upsetting that it had all that. It was like, great, another lease of life. Right, go and sit there for 4 years. And it was like, great. Now this is where on the motorway we're even going down to very low miles per hour speeds, and you can see by the weight, and that's why the embargo is set for the weight of this freight. But now we're coming off on the A453. We're coming up to Ratcliffe Station, the power station itself, which also is home to East Midlands Parkway. So it was great to see the HST going over past the power station as well, which we'll be seeing in a moment. Nowadays, as we know, we are slowly coming to the end of the HST. The HST is being put onto heritage lines. The HST is only with 3 mainline services. We've got ScotRail, we've got Cross Country, we've got Great Western Railway, GWR. Cross Country are finalising and finishing its HST services in October to be replaced by the Voyagers, the 220 and 221s, which isn't a great replacement. Because the problem you've got with the Voyagers is that they can be connected together, but if they don't have staff, they can shut down one of the trains that it's connected to and say there's nobody in there and just lock it. So then it's half the train. So the HST was always good with the 7 cars, being able to travel on there and, you know, being able to have that train crew throughout the whole train instead of just part of the train. So they are going to be removing them in October. Great Western Railway is saying December they're going to be removing theirs. ScotRail haven't announced anything yet, but I believe they soon will be releasing something, especially with the help that they've had from GWR with the maintenance. That it's just going to get very tricky to get drivers and, you know, route knowledge and train or loco knowledge as well. But Rail Adventure have got Class 43 HSTs. Network Rail have got Class 43 HSTs. Colas Rail helped Network Rail with that. And we've seen that on the network. The measurement trains, you know, the yellow livery, the flying banana as they call it, with that blue light that poof, hits off into the, you know, up into the sky. It's able to measure the train track and all of that at a good speed throughout the whole country. And this is where I think a lot of these trains should end up. Network Rail should keep a load more. So once GWR start getting rid of them or cross country, Network Rail should get more. Because I think a measurement train with a HST is a really good way of getting through the network in a quick and fast speed. Now this is where I thought it was a bit tricky that the 43 had to go right here to then go underneath the A52. But since we arrived, I then found out that it wasn't allowed to go on the A52 slip road up towards QMC, up on the bridge. Again, it's the weight of this loco, of this power car, that prevents it. And this is where they have to map every route, and every time it's different. Because you got different locos going to different areas. Colne Valley had a loco, 2 HST power cars on this week as well, and it was a different route to this. But it was still really great looking at it going through the trees, through the road, and all of that. Now, with the HST, it is going to heritage. Colne Valley have got them, Ruddington's got them with 125 Group, 125 Heritage. They're at Butterley as well. At the beginning of next month, July 1st, Butterley, Midland Railway and Butterley, so near Alfreton, they've got a HST power car weekend. So if you haven't already booked tickets for it, come up and have a look. You're going to see the fastest HST in the world, the rear car that's going to be there. A couple of VP185 East Midland trains ones are going to be there as well, and it's going to sound epic and amazing. I might be there, I don't know yet. I'd need to try and figure out and move things around to get myself down there for one of those days, but I'm going to try my best with that. But if not, go and have a look online. Midland Butterley HST powered HST weekend, go and have a look. And there's some good stuff at Butterley. I don't know if it will be open, but you know Thomas the Tank Engine, and Friends, so the TV show. Well, there was another TV show just around that time called Tugs, and there's a really cool carriage in there that has a load of memorabilia and history around tugs, and even some of the original filmed boats that were used in there, the models. So really nice to have a look at that. Now, what's the future of 43025? Well, at the moment it's being cleaned, it's being checked, it's being just making sure that everything is running smoothly before they switch on that power car once again. But the plan is to get it back on the main line. That's right. We know there's the Midland Pullman. What an epic Midland Pullman is, you know, the Pullman dining, the first class experience going around the country. But we need more heritage HST sets, and 125 Group are planning on doing something like that. And hopefully 43025 will be one of those power cars that will be used in these upcoming events soon. It's not now. It's not now. Over the next few months they're going to try and work out things, I'm guessing. But that's the ultimate goal, is to get them back on the main line. And that's why Midland Butterley, that's why Ruddington, it's all near the main line to be able to be used. Service here at Ruddington because it's easier for them, and all of that. And just before I forget, there is Project Rio. Project Rio is Midland Main Line, where they ran from London to Manchester in a gorgeous livery. And 125 Group have painted one of the power cars in that livery. So go and check it out on that open weekend, the first weekend of July. I think it is the 1st and 2nd of July, and you'll be able to see it in all its glory. I've only seen pictures, but I can't wait to see that in the flesh. Now, as we're coming into Ruddington itself, again, another really nice heritage railway. They've got the Pacer, they've got a few other things there. I went here last year for looking at the Class 43s there. They started up a couple, which was nice. But they got a little model, a smaller railway, smaller gauge railway, and they've got buses, and Nottingham buses, Trent Barton kind of things, all the history around that as well. So they've got a lot of things there. Now, the downside to dropping this power car off was just to the right there. You can see a hole that had been filled. So there was a lot of dirt in the floor and in the rails, so trying to get it back on the rails was a bit more difficult than it should have been. But as you can see, we are slowly getting there, and it did end up being there, and that's why some of this footage shows the loco being pulled up and back down again. Now, the time it takes to adjust this, to take off the chains, to put the ramp on, to get it down onto the track does take quite a while, with a lot of blocks and things to get it perfect. So as you'll probably see in a minute, it goes from sunshine and light to pitch black pretty much, because that did take quite a while to do, and that's why. But we've got it in full 4K. This is what we want to see. We want to be able to look at this power car being lowered. We've seen the trip that it's made from Ely and Ruddington, and that's what we're doing, and I wanted to document that for you. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. It is an extended edition, so you have seen a lot of unseen footage. This is just over double the amount of footage shown in this video compared to the original one, MegaSim. Now, on MegaSim channel, which is my other channel, it's just under 100,000 views, so you never know, this video hopefully will get to that stage as well. But because this is a new channel, the algorithms and things aren't kicking off as they do on the MegaSim channel with 12,000 subscribers, but hopefully it will get there soon and we will get going on that, because that's the thing, we want to provide train real world content, and that's what we're doing on this channel now on Train Real World. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you here listening to the sights and sounds of the power car being lowered. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Train Real World and MegaSim as well. And we've got some great videos coming up, amazing videos of trips that we've done around the UK for work, for pleasure. A really good one this weekend where we're in Acton, and many more to come as well. I am Stephen, MegaSim, this is Train Real World, and I will see you on the next video. See you later, guys. Bye bye.
Your phone hasn't gone off, has it? Because just checking, mate. Because someone's just been trying to talk over there. Straight to you. Straight to Sam. Out towards the main road, and then literally the first tiny little entrance on your left, just there. Yeah, it probably does say that, yeah. Alright, yeah, I'll get it. That's it, yeah, there is, yeah. Keep it coming! Well, Cal, give us a bit of slack, mate. Is there anyone that can open up? Okay. Pull it up, let it go down. Oh, is it? More speed. Yeah. Where's the... Sorry. Basically it's got to go here from the other. Yeah. Not past the course of the train.